It's finally September, gamers. That means a new season for Marvel Snap Ranked, as well as a new season pass and new season pass card. For 10 USD, you could pick up the Loki season pass, who is a 3/5 with the on reveal effect. Replace all of the cards currently in your hand with cards from your opponent's starting deck. They all get -1 cost. I really think the Snap team nailed it in terms of creating a card that feels very Loki. The chaos that's just a little bit controlled by you as the player in deciding when and where you get to play out these random cards you're going to be generating from your opponent's deck feels like it captures the essence of this character in a fantastic way. Today's video is going to run through other Marvel Snap cards that work well with Loki, as well as dive on into my rough draft deck ideas that I'm looking forward to diving into exploring this character with in Snap. Let's go ahead and get to it, shall we? There are two Marvel Snap cards that very obviously synergize with Loki, and you're going to see them present in all of the decks that I am going to be covering today. The first of these is Quinjet, 1 energy, 2 power, ongoing effect. Cards that didn't start in your deck have -1 cost to a minimum of 1. This means if you have Quinjet in play, when you Loki to swap out your hand, all of those cards that you're copying from your opponent's starting deck are going to be not just 1 cost from Loki, but a total of -2 with Loki's reduction as well as Quinjet combined together. The other card that synergizes really well with Loki is the Collector. 2 energy, 2 power, gets +1 whenever a card enters your hand from anywhere other than your deck. This means when you Loki swap out the cards in your hand, for every card that you swap out, the Collector is going to be getting bigger. These two cards that work well with Loki also cost 1 and 2 energy, with Loki costing 3, meaning that any deck playing Loki with these cards is going to have some really sweet curves. You go Quinjet on 1, Collector on 2, Loki on 3, pump your Collector up, and then have a handful of goodies that are all really cheap thanks to Loki and the Quinjet. The first Loki deck list I want to talk about today is called Little Loki because it's playing a bunch of cards that have low energy costs while generating cards to power our Collector up and keep our hand full for Loki to be swapping out. We mix in a dash of tech cards here with Cosmo as well as the Shadow King to disrupt our opponent or protect our own large threats like Collector that we're building up. And then we add Chavez at the top end of this curve of our deck because we don't really have any powerful cards that we're looking to draw on turn 6. It lets us effectively play from that 11 card deck, meaning that we'll get to have that Quinjet Collector Loki curve more consistently than we otherwise would. If you're not a fan of staying low to the ground and you want to go big over the top of what your opponent is doing with flashy plays outside of Loki, this Loki Dino deck is a good way to accomplish that potentially. We're leveraging Zabu here as a way to make our variety of 4 energy cards more affordable. Nick Fury in particular, in combination with Zabu, is a phenomenal way to stack our hand full of cards for Loki to swap out. Typically, the 3/6 energy plays that Nick Fury is generating, you're not able to play out of your hand over the course of the game. But with Loki taking those 6 energy cards and swapping them into something else that's cheaper, and then making them cheaper again, and then adding Quinjet into the mix, it means that the 3 cards that Nick Fury is generating could potentially all be played out over the course of the game. Because this deck has big top-end bombs such as Devil Dinosaur and Doctor Doom, we're also choosing to leverage Iron Lad as additional 4 energy card that Zabu can make cheaper. Iron Lad can pop Doombots across the board, it can grow big and tall like a dino, or it can just help us find that copy of Nick Fury a little bit sooner, or flip Loki's effect while he's still hiding on top of the deck. One other thing to keep in mind when playing this Devil Dinosaur deck list out is that Mystique and Agent Coulson or Nick Fury alongside Zabu lets you make really big swings on the final turn of the game. You'll play your Devil Dinosaur out into one path, and then on the sixth turn, you'll play Mystique copying that dino into another path, and then you'll play Agent Coulson or Nick Fury with your remaining 3 energy to gas your hand back up, powering up both your Devil Dinosaur and the Mystique copying its ongoing effect. Our next deck list, Loki Sera, is kind of a mashup of the Sera Hitmonkey deck that's been popular since Hitmonkey release, alongside a little Moon Girl Quinjet collector package that all works well with Loki. One of the things that this deck does that's kind of nice is it acknowledges the fact that Loki is just an above rate 3 energy play, getting 5 stats for 3 energy, or with Sera on the board, 5 stats for just 2 energy is something that can easily swing the game on its own, meaning that Loki is relevant in this deck even if you don't draw him early to swap your hand out. When you play Loki out on that final turn of the game, he's also generating you additional value past his own stat line, because even though you won't necessarily get to play those cards out that you're generating in your final flourish, they'll be able to power up the collector that you have in play as well, making it difficult for your opponent to predict exactly how many numbers you're going to be deploying to the board and how. Because I want to play Quinjet and Collector in this deck with Loki anyways, I've added in a copy of Moon Girl as well to allow us to have not just one Hitmonkey, but 2, and Wasp gets mixed in here as a fun additional enabler on top of all of this as a free card to let us power up one or both of our Hitmonkeys on that final turn of the game. Speaking of Moon Girl, our next deck list is a little bit more of a traditional Moon Girl She-Hulk double up deck with this Loki package slotted into it. So those not familiar with how this deck works, is the basic idea is you use Moon Girl to copy your She-Hulk. You can then pass on the 5th turn of the game, soaking that unused energy into your Sunspot, and then not just one, but both of your She-Hulks benefit from that unused energy discount, giving you 2 1 energy 9 power cards to play out in that final moment of the game. Because Collector and Quinjet work quite well with the Moon Girl She-Hulk package that this deck has going on, in addition to Loki, it felt like a natural direction to kind of blend these two things together to potential success. We fill in the rest of the details with other cards that generate things to keep our hand full for Loki, as well as trigger our Collector, such as the Mirage, Sentinel, and Agent Coulson. And then finally, we have a couple of tech cards here in Cosmo and Armor that can not only be disruptive to opposing strategies, but they can also ensure that our own large cards like Collector and She-Hulk are safe from opposing interaction like Shang-Chi. Finally, I think I've saved what is arguably the best Loki deck idea for last here today. And let's be honest, would it be a Jeff Hoagland video if we didn't fit some bounce action in there somewhere? Specifically, Falcon being able to bounce all of our 1 energy cards back to our hand seems like it could be quite fun with Loki as this really efficient way to get our hand super full. Specifically, if we play Squirrel Girl out on the 1st turn of the game, she creates 2 additional 1 energy cards. We can bounce Squirrel Girl and her squirrels back to our hand on turn 2 with Falcon, and then we can Loki on turn 3, swapping out an absolutely stacked hand for a bunch of cheap cards we're copying from our opponent's deck. In slightly later turns of the game, Shauna can enable a similar bounce back and then Loki as well, in addition to giving us time to play out the Collector to power up when Falcon is sending all these 1 energy cards back to our hand. Now, because this deck list isn't obviously always going to have access to Loki in these sequences, we've also got a copy of Khazar here as a way to power up our 1 energy cards that are swarming the board, and we have Mirage as an additional way to keep our hand big when Loki's around, but also provide us with an additional tool that can have reasonable stat lines to help us win games on the Collector when our own deck needs to do the heavy lifting. all in all, I'm super excited to try out all of these Loki decks on the ladder later tonight when the season resets. Loki's definitely one of my favorite Marvel characters of all time, and I've always been a little bit sad that he wasn't in Marvel Snap yet. I would love to know what kind of Loki deck ideas you've got cooking up in a comment down below so I can consider giving them a try to feature any of the fantastic ones here on the channel in the not too distant future. As always, if you enjoyed my musings on this subject, be sure to snap that like button to show a little bit of support at no cost to yourself, and make sure you're subscribed to the channel. It doesn't cost you anything, and if you ring that bell as well, it lets you know every single day when I upload a new piece of Marvel Snap content here. Thanks for watching through all the way to the end as always, folks. Be sure to check back in again tomorrow for a Loki highlight video here as well.